Let's be honest, trying to understand cloud computing can feel like learning a whole new language, right? You've got all these acronyms, all these services. Well, don't worry. We're going to break it all down and give you a super simple way to think about everything.
I mean, seriously, you log into AWS or Google Cloud, and bam, it is an alphabet soup of names. EC2, S3, RDS, Lambda, the list just never seems to end. It is totally overwhelming. But here's the thing. What if there was a secret that makes all of it click into place?
And that secret is, they're all pretty much the same thing. No, really, almost every single one of those cloud services is just a different wrapper on top of a few very basic core ideas. Once you see the pattern, the whole thing just makes sense.
All right, so to understand this pattern, we have to start at the very foundation. We're talking about the bedrock the entire cloud. And that is the virtual machine, or what you'll always hear called a VM.
So, what is a VM? Honestly, the best way to think about it is that you're just renting a computer. It's a real computer with a CPU, memory, and a hard drive, but it's sitting in some massive data center owned by Amazon or Google. You never touch it physically, you just connect to it over the internet, and you can do whatever you want with it.
And this is the key insight right here. Everything, and I mean everything in the cloud, ultimately has to run on a computer. So when you're storing a file or running a database or whatever, deep down, it's all running on a VM. This is the fundamental building block of it all.
And of course, all the big players have their own brand name for this. AWS calls their VMs EC2, Google Cloud calls theirs Compute Engine. The names change, but the idea is exactly the same. You're just renting a computer.
Now, this introduces a really important idea. A basic VM is what we call an unmanaged service. See, the cloud provider just gives you the raw ingredients, the CPU, the RAM, but you have to do all the cooking. You're responsible for installing all the software, keeping it updated, worrying about security patches, and figuring out what to do if it crashes. It gives you total control, but man, it is a lot of work. Okay, so since doing everything yourself on a VM can be a huge pain, the cloud providers came up with a brilliant idea: managed services. These are services where they do all that hard work for you. This is the next step up the ladder, and they're designed to solve really common problems.
Let's take a super common example, storing files, like photos and videos for your website. The hard way is to just dump them on your VM's hard drive. But then you have to worry. What if I run out of space? What if that disk fails and I lose everything? How do I handle 1 million people trying to download a file at once? Or you could take the easy way and use a managed service.
And at EasyWay is a service called an object store. The most famous one in the world is probably Amazon S3. With S3, you don't think about hard drives at all. You just give it a file. That's it. It has basically infinite space, and it automatically copies your file to multiple places so it's super safe. That's a managed service. Amazon is managing all that nasty infrastructure stuff for you.
This quote just says it all, doesn't it? Nobody wants to host their own database. And it's so true. If you thought managing files on a VM was a headache, trying to run a database yourself is a whole other level of pain.
I mean, think about it. On a VM, you're installing the database, tweaking all the configuration settings, setting up copies of it so it doesn't go down, figuring out backups. It's literally a full-time job for an expert. Compare that to a managed service like AWS RDS. You go to a web page, you click a few buttons, and boom, you have a professional-grade database ready to go. Backups, handled. Scaling, handled. It's an absolute game changer.
Okay, but with databases, there's a really important catch you need to understand. Some managed services, like RDS, will just run popular open-source databases for you, like Postgres or MySQL. That's awesome, because if you ever get tired of AWS, you can take your Postgres database and move it somewhere else. But they also offer their own special proprietary databases. Think DynamoDB from Amazon or Spanner from Google. These can be incredibly powerful, but if you build your app on one of them, you are stuck. You can't just move to another cloud provider. That's called vendor lock-in, and it's a really big deal.
All right, so we've covered storing files and running databases. The last big piece of the puzzle is, where do you run your code, the actual logic for your application? And just like before, you've got two main paths, the do-it-yourself VM way, or this newer thing you've probably heard about called serverless.
So what does serverless even mean? Well, the most common type is called Functions as a Service, or FaaS. You've definitely heard of the big one, AWS Lambda. And the idea is kind of mind-blowing. You don't manage a server at all.
You literally just upload a small chunk of code, a function, and you tell Amazon, hey, run this when X happens. You don't pick an operating system, you don't worry about updates, you just write the code. It feels like magic.
But here's a super important thing to remember. Serverless isn't just one thing, it's really a spectrum. Think of it like a slider. All the way on the left, you got your basic VM where you manage everything. Total control, total responsibility. As you slide to the right, you get into managed services. And all the way at the far end is something like Lambda, where the cloud provider is managing almost everything for you. It's all about how much work you want to offload.
Okay, so we have our core pieces: VMs, managed storage, managed databases, and serverless functions. But wait, there's more. The ladder of abstraction keeps going up. There are entire companies whose whole business model is to build even nicer abstractions on top of what AWS and Google provide. Think about a company like Datadog. They basically look at the monitoring tools that AWS gives you and say, these are okay, but we can build a much slicker, easier to use version. And they build it on top of AWS. Snowflake did the same thing for data warehouses. And a company like Vercel, they've created this beautiful, simple developer experience that is secretly just a really clever wrapper around a bunch of complicated AWS services.
And see, that's the whole pattern right there. It's just abstractions built on top of other abstractions. A managed database hides the complexity of a VM. A service like Vercel hides the complexity of managed databases and other AWS services. Each layer is designed to do one thing: make life easier for the person building the software.
All right, just one more concept to really round out your understanding, and that's the difference between regional and global services. It's all about geography. So a regional service is pretty simple. It lives in one place. Your VM, for example, might be running in a data center in, say, Ohio. That's its home. But a global service is different. It's designed to be everywhere at once. Think of a CDN, a content delivery network, which has copies of your website all over the world. As you can imagine, building and running a global service is way more complex and, usually more expensive.
And this is where things get really wild. You can have global databases. Services like Google's Spanner or Amazon's DynamoDB Global Tables will literally copy your data to data centers all around the planet automatically. Why? So that your user in Tokyo and your user in London can both get super fast access to the data because it's physically close to them. This is an insanely hard computer science problem to solve, and that's what you're paying the big bucks for them to handle.
So look, if you remember only one thing from all this, make it this. Stop trying to memorize hundreds of service names. It's a waste of time. Instead, learn to see the pattern. Whenever you see a new service, just ask two simple questions. First, what common problem is this thing trying to solve? And second, how much work is it doing for me? Is it a basic unmanaged tool or a super managed all-inclusive service?
Once you have that framework in your head, you're set. You can understand not just the cloud services of today, but any new ones they invent tomorrow. It's not about memorization anymore, it's a way of thinking. So I'll leave you with this. What's that one cloud service whose name has always been a total mystery to you? Go look it up. I'm willing to bet that with this new lens, it'll finally click.